Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see everyone here this beautiful day. Always said, you know, the one beautiful day for the last 6 weeks, we're inside. So I apologize for that, and we will make it as quick as we can so you can get out and enjoy the beautiful afternoon. So this is the first meeting of the year for the Joint Committee on the Management of Public Funds. And this is our very first in-person hearing since COVID. So it's just wonderful to be here and see all your beautiful smiling faces. Today, we will hear from activities of the State Treasurer, from the Treasurer, Department of Commerce, Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industrial Development Corporation, Maryland Technology Development Corporation, TEDCO, and also Meridian Management Group. All of us are aware of the tremendous negative financial impact coming out of Washington. We're in the middle of a huge government shutdown now, which is, of course, followed by the large layoffs. And Maryland has been the state most impacted by layoff of federal workers. So more than ever, we need additional economic development from our state partners to really fill the gap. Maryland, we are not helpless. We are a very wealthy state, and we have the resources to really make a big impact, to create and to improve on economic activities that is happening throughout Maryland. So we look forward to hearing from all these economic development agencies on your projects and whatever you're willing to share with us. So thank you all for being here. And I'd like to turn over the remarks to our co-chair, Courtney Watson from the House of Delegates.
Thank you, Senator. I would just like to add that we do have some members who are participating by watching online and or will be watching later today after they have finished with some of the conflicts that they had with this particular time. At this point in time, we'd like to call up the Treasurer, Derek Davis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Derek Davis, Treasurer for the state of Maryland. To my left, I'm having a moment. Keith Morris. I promise you I knew it. Keith Morris, our Chief Investment Officer. John Martin, our Chief Deputy Treasurer. Laura Addis, Deputy Treasurer for Public Policy. And Rebecca Ruff, heading debt management. Sorry, Keith. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you all today. There are a few things that we would like to go over. Is someone heading up the, okay. All right, so with that, I will start. First of all, thank you for inviting me and my team to brief you on the progress that the State Treasurer's Office has made over the last year in the face of some changes and challenging times. To start out, I will share a few general updates about my priorities, board work, and participation in recent national conference. Then I will provide a few highlights from each of the divisions in the Treasurer's Office. Slide 2. You will see the 4 priorities that I outlined in my re-election speech earlier this term. My commitment to those priorities is probably best seen in my votes and commentary on the Board of Public Works meetings. By shining a light on contracts that underserve minority or settlements that cost the state too much, I am doing what I can to represent our interests. Slide 3. mention some of the other boards and commissions that I lead as chair. While I have been chair of the State Pension Board of Trustees for a few years, I only recently became chair of the Maryland Saves Board. In these roles, I continue to amplify the importance of retirement readiness and savings. The other two boards that I lead allow me to focus on the state's debt limit and property tax rates. Your input on business before each of these boards informs my every action that I take. Switching gears to slide 4, it shows some photos from the National Association of State Treasurers Conference that we hosted in Baltimore this past summer. I think it's June 1st through the 4th. I was proud to have so many state treasurers and other fiscal leaders from around the country join Governor Moore, Comptroller Learman, and myself to see what makes our state so unique. They informed me that at the National Association of State Treasurers, that may have been the largest or best attended conference that we've ever had. So obviously that was a source of pride, not only for me, but for the state of Maryland. Slide 5 begins the overview of each of the division in the Treasurer's Office. You remember that we assumed responsibility of the 529 program back in June of 2023. Since that time, we have successfully closed all 3,394 prepaid claims and continued improving customer service for the remaining account holders. In addition, the Maryland College Investment Plan and the Maryland Achieving a Better Life, or ABLE program, have achieved a number of milestones. For the investment plan, the last 2 years, an online resource for college financing gave MCIP the best possible ranking for a state-sponsored plan. As of June 30th, total funded accounts increased 5.9% from the previous fiscal year for a total of 382,505 accounts. In addition, total contributions increased from 8.1% to $1.015 billion. For ABLE, our program continues to be ranked in the top 10 programs across the nation, 7th overall out of 49 total plans. The number of funded accounts at the end of fiscal year 2025 reached 7,782, while assets under management grew to over $122.7 million. This represents 19% growth in the number of funded accounts and 33% growth in assets under management. I also want to mention that this year, the State Treasurer's Office hired a bilingual ambassador to engage with Spanish-speaking audiences and develop Spanish-translated flyers to promote MCIP and the Maryland State Contribution Program. Moving to slide 6, here is a snapshot of the state's investment portfolio. As of September 30th, the par value of the general fund investment portfolio was $19.764 billion, with an average return of 3.72% this fiscal year to date. Year-to-date gross interest earnings for fiscal year 2026 through September 30 were $170 million. The Maryland Local Government Investment Pool, in turn, had a balance of $13.7 billion with an effective annual yield of 4.33% as of September 30th. Slide 7 provides a brief update of the state investment policy, which is now set forth in regulation. Our Chief Investment Officer and investment staff have been reaching out to partners in state and local government to make sure that everyone is aware of the new standards. We think that the current framework, where the asset classes for different types of investment are set in regulations rather than statute, strikes an appropriate balance between certainty and flexibility. Slide 8 mentions some additional updates from our Banking Services Division, which oversees the state's banking accounts. Part of this work has involved migrating various information technology workflows and systems to improve efficiency, transparency, and internal controls. Slides 9 through 11 provide some developments from the Debt Management Division. Most importantly, in June, the State Treasurer's Office held a successful sale of $1.6 billion in general obligation bonds, including $900 million in tax-exempt money bonds. In addition, as part of the sale, we conducted a $657 million refunding transaction that generated $34.8 million in debt service savings for fiscal year 2026. On slide 10, my team and I have added some information about the state's credit rating based upon input from your staff. As you know, prior to the bond sale, one of the three agencies that the state contracts with to rate the state's credit downgraded us by one notch to AA1. The agency previously put Maryland on negative watch, so the change was not completely unexpected. Based on the agency's written opinion, the state's close connection to the federal government appears to have been a tipping point. Despite this change, the other two rating agencies, Fitch and S&P Global, followed up shortly thereafter with decisions to maintain Maryland's AAA rating with a stable outlook. Maryland remains one of 18 states to have a AAA rating from at least two of the three major rating agencies. While there were some concerns about the downgrade potentially impacting the state's success at the bond sales, those fears were not realized. Maryland debt remains highly rated and one of significant interest to the investor community. At the bond sale, each of the four bidding groups received 6 bids, which is high for such a large transaction. Slide 11 looks ahead to what comes next. The state is now in a position to evaluate how to best position itself for another challenging budget year. I hope to continue to serve as a resource for all of you as you weigh and make decisions that impact the state's finances and credit ratings. Moving to slide 12, here we provide some background on our insurance division, which has been particularly busy given claims related to the Key Bridge collapse and the Child Victims Act. There's not much to report yet on the Key Bridge claims, as those are still in the very early stages of litigation. We can share that as of October 1, the State Treasurer's Office is processing approximately 1,250 Child Victim Act suits for approximately 12,200 plaintiffs. It's still unclear whether these claims will eventually be consolidated or given special handling outside of the traditional tort setting. Slide 13 notes that our priorities for the next session will be to protect the office interests and develop legislation that continues to modernize operations. At the top of the slide, at the top of every slide in this presentation, we have described this year as a year of resilience. I think that could actually be said for all of us in state government. No matter what federal headwinds come our way, the state is in control of much of its own destiny. And the Treasurer's Office remains focused on conducting successful bond sales, earning as much interest as we can from the state's investment, closely monitoring the state's credit ratings, and helping the state manage ongoing and new insurance claims. Slide 14 provides contact information should you all have any follow-up questions after we leave today. And let me close by saying I appreciate the opportunity that you have given me to contribute what I can to the challenges facing the state, and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Senator James, question?
Thank you. It's so wonderful to see you, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you.
I do want to just ask you a little bit about the Moody's, change, because I think, we've always been relying on the federal government. So I don't know if you could elaborate just a little bit more about what they said in terms of why they did this, and what is your thoughts about how long we might be in that position, whether that is something, that we can alter in some way. Obviously, it's a third-party review, and they have their own opinions. But just trying to figure out, because we've always been relying on the federal government. I get that this is unprecedented federal government. So, but anything you could speak to that a little bit about would be helpful.
I'll take a quick stab, and Keith would follow me, or Rebecca, I'm sorry. will follow me up on it. I'll take the easier one, though, probably the one we don't want to hear first. Once they downgrade you, it's very difficult, to move back up. Not saying that it's impossible, but it's going to take a significant change to move back, which is part of the reason why states fight so hard not to be, because, like I said, it's a process, and once they downgrade you, a lot has to change for them to move you back up. The biggest thing, and I'll let Rebecca expand upon it more, the biggest thing they kept sort of throwing at us was the federal government, quite frankly. The reduction in the personnel, the grants, the research, all the types of things that Maryland relies on. We have so many federal workers, particularly in our two largest jurisdictions, Montgomery and Prince George's, and then, all the contractors that we have, and so it's closely tied. I had a conversation earlier today about whether or not Maryland was in a recession. I don't believe so, but the economists that are talking, they're predicting as many as, right now, they're saying as many as 16 or 17 states they're predicting or could be in a recession. And point blank, and this is just me talking,
Sure.
A lot of that has to do with the federal policies. If you look at where we were 1 year ago at this time, the biggest thing we heard, there's a white-hot economy, and the Federal Reserve was trying to manage, the inflation, and which is why they weren't lowering interest rates, and all of that kind of talk. You don't really hear that now. The Fed has started lowering interest rates, and the same fears about inflation are still there, but now we don't have a white-hot economy. The conversation's different. So, as I said to the reporter when I talked to today, I don't want to inject politics in it, so I don't need to give an opinion. I think that people can evaluate for themselves what has happened in 1 year and why we are where we are. But if they press me, I'll tell them it's tariffs and all sorts of other policies that have been the antithesis of what has made us heretofore a leader, in a global economy. So, Rebecca, you can give them a less political answer.
I think what you've shared is spot on. I'm not sure I have much more context to offer, other than we have seen in recent years that all three of the rating agencies, but Moody's in particular, has shifted to more reliance on a scorecard for determining the rating for states' credit. And the scorecard is more heavily reliant on actual quantitative metrics rather than on infusing the more qualitative metrics, which is where Maryland has always historically shined, our structures and our institutions that make sure that we have strong fiscal management, whether we're facing good times or bad times.
So you think it's more sort of robotic or numbers-driven, this kind of change from sort of the narrative of our extraordinary history with state treasurers and management to this sort of less, it's pretty cold, hard numbers, and they just go down that way? Is that?
If we're being perfectly honest, since I've been around, they've always have sort of told or indicated that by the numbers, we weren't a AAA state. We gotten extra points for things like Capital Debt Affordability Committee. They, as Rebecca was saying, they liked our management structures, and so we got the bump to AAA because of all of those kinds of things we have in place. But as she also mentioned, that they're moving less away from qualitative, more to quantitative, and then you couple that with the policies, and
But just so
here we are.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. Just to be accurate, if I'm asked about this, which I probably will be in business communities, I want to be accurate because I think, and we don't have to, it's not political, but just reality is that this federal government is currently, it's not just that we're tied to the federal government, it's the extraordinary level of layoffs, firings,
yes,
cancellation of grants, cancellation of research and all of the, and then the ripple effect into our economy is rather extraordinary as we hug the Capitol. I mean, I would be accurate in saying that, right? That is, if I looked at Moody's report,
Yes.
I would read between the lines. I could see that that is what they're talking about to some extent.
Yes, that's absolutely, I mean, some, they may not want to accept that answer, but that is reality. As Wall Street, or the bond rating agencies, as they've said to us, these are the reasons for the downgrade. When they talk about when other people, say we're a high debt state, and so we've always been that.
Right.
So, and we've always still been a AAA state. So again, I always ask the question, what has changed from what was before to what is now? And in this case, all the things that they're saying, it's always been the case. Maryland has always been reliant on the federal government, and we still maintain our AAA bond rating, and now we aren't. So it absolutely, a lot of the issues that we are experiencing are federal government related, or inspired, whatever the appropriate word may be. And, that's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you,
Can I
Mr.
just,
Chairman.
just
yes.
offer
Yes.
also from a Wall Street perspective, from a Wall Street perspective, as Treasurer Davis had pointed out, our bonds have done very, very well. The auction went very well. The issuance went very well. All of the high-grade quality bonds like ours traded exceedingly better than a lot of other states. So for the moment, we're doing just fine from that perspective, from a market perspective.
So it didn't cost us monetarily if you would.
Correct. It hasn't cost us anything from that perspective.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it can't in the future, but Wall Street has respected what we've done, and they really haven't hit us for any of that, even though there was that small downgrade.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator James. Coach, you have a question?
Do you? Are you moving on?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so quick comment and question, Treasurer. The successes you've had with the Maryland 529 plan is legendary from where we were a few years ago. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
When you took over, we all thought you were
Stupid.
I've heard stupid and crazy used to do that, but you show the confidence and you have delivered on that. So thank you on behalf of the citizens of Maryland who invested in their children's college education. That's really a noteworthy accomplishment. Quick question on the investment general fund. You issued in your statement said the par value is around 19.7 million. So par value is what you basically bought it at, the face value of whatever securities. Any measure of the market value at a particular point in time of any of those investments?
Yeah.
So.
The book value is roughly 19.7 billion. And as of September 30th, the market value is roughly 19.4 billion, so relatively close. The performance in the portfolio, unfortunately, there were securities bought many years ago that had a very low coupon on them. They're rolling off. By the end of 26, we should get most of those off the books, and then the return will be a little bit more aligned with what like MILJIP is, which is a much shorter fund. But in general, the fund's done very well. The paper that was put in this year has done well. It just moves up and down on a daily basis, but it's almost exact. It's pretty close to where the market value and the book value are.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Any more questions, committee members? Chair Watson.
Thank you, Senator. I want to echo what the senator said about the Maryland College investment plans and the fact that an outside agency organization rated it #1 the second year in a row is pretty incredible considering where we were. So thank you for your efforts on that. I wanted to ask a couple quick questions. The ongoing effort to verify the valid investment policies based on the new laws that the General Assembly passed, you are proactively checking with agencies and other stakeholders to see where they are on that. Would you have any sort of sense of what percentage are, moving along at the pace they should in terms of developing their own updated policies? Or how long it will take?
It's a great question, and I appreciate the question. We went out after getting this done and proactively looked. We have policies from just about all the entities in the state. We should. However, a lot of them are going back to 1996, 97, 98. So we've gone out and said, hey, this is what the new policy looks like. Do you need to update yours? I would say we're probably about a third of the way in getting, we've gotten most of the big ones, the big counties, the big cities. There's a lot of smaller entities that all technically should have a policy. And so we're going out to every one of them, and we've done that. We do have policies in place for every entity. It just some are fairly old, and there's nothing actually in the statute that requires them to update it,
Right.
which may be something to address at some point down the road. But we are doing that on a proactive basis.
Good point, and I'm super happy to hear that, because if you don't ask, a lot of times, especially with the smaller entities, it won't happen. Also wanted to mention the excellent outcome of saving almost $35 million in debt service. That's quite an accomplishment. You covered the downgrading. I'm glad it didn't have any effect this year, and I hope that we can repeat that. And then the last thing I had was on the insurance highlights. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot. I mean, the 12,200 plaintiffs for the Child Victims Act is simply breathtaking. And on top of that, the Key Bridge claims. And am I assuming correctly that you have not previously been the TPA for IWIF, or that you're just formalizing that and you have been the TPA?
We have been the TPA, we just formalized
Okay,
it and
great.
updated the agreement.
So with all of those things, Mr. Treasurer, are you asking for more resources in your budget?
We're always going to ask for more resources. Let me put that out there. But we also understand certain economic realities. We're not going to ask for anything more than what we absolutely need to be able to move forward. Again, that'll be the request. But again, we live in the same space that you all do.
Right.
And
But that's a lot of insurance work.
yes.
And so as a member of appropriations, I'll be looking for that to see if you are asking for it, because we also want to make sure that we're processing those claims. And last, I would just say that I love your a year of resilience theme, but I think we need to change it to first year of resilience as we move into year 2 of what's facing us with the federal government.
Yes.
Thank you so much, all of you, for your efforts.
And if I can just say this, first of all, I want to thank you and Chair Ellis as well for your kind comments about the Maryland 529 program. It'd be remiss of me. That obviously what was the staff. They spent many long hours and a lot of hard work. And to this day, they're still working on it. I've sort of sat in the seat that you guys are, that you're in, and I know what it's like to face angry constituents about things. So that was a priority for us, that this wouldn't be hanging out for you all to address, and hopefully we've gotten it to a place where we can all be proud of.
Thank you. Senator Vital?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I touched it. And I don't have to touch it on my desk. Mr. Treasurer, thank you and your team. You're really doing a great job. And my only disappointment is that I'm not working with you in the legislature, but I really appreciate the work that you all are doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for being here today. And we are ready to move on to the Department of Commerce. If you would like to take your seats, Stephen Rice, the Deputy Secretary, and Andy Fish, the Senior Director. And if there is anyone else, you may introduce them when you come forward. Proceed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's great to see you, Senator Ellis, and it's great to see you, Delegate Watson, and it's great to see you, Senator Vital. I spent a lot of time in Anne Arundel County as well. My name is Stephen Rice. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as Deputy Secretary of Commerce for the state of Maryland. I am going to not probably provide a whole lot of in-depth analysis and assessment. That job is for the gentleman to my right, Mr. Andy Fish. I oversee the Division of Business Attraction and Special Projects for the Department of Commerce. There are 8 offices within that division. One of them, and most especially important today, is the Office of Finance Programs that Andy leads. So thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary. And Chairs Ellis and Watson, thank you for the opportunity to be here. If we move to slide 3, we've got a brief agenda, and Deputy Secretary Rice just covered the first point about commerce. And following, we have about a slide each on the programs that are listed here on page 3 that we'll be touching on today. So we'll move over to slide 4. Just a reminder about commerce is all about, and this is really our messaging on the website and what we take to heart every day with what we do. And then moving into page 5, we get to the first program that we'll touch on today. The Building Our Future grant program was new in 2023, and it's been very successful over the time. And some of the examples that the program has helped do is fund things like transformative innovative projects, things that have led to a medical device innovation lab, an R&D center focused on battery technology, advanced material discoveries and recoveries, as well as GMP compliant manufacturing, which is important to our life science sector. So that's a really unique program in that regard, and the round for fiscal 26 just closed. It's got funding of about $7 million, and the team is reviewing those applications, and we'll make award at the appropriate time when that comes through. If we move to page 6, we move to the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund that was created with cannabis reform back in 2023 with House Bill 556. And this was a very deliberate piece of legislation that led to very focused rollout or tranches of the program, and the activity to date really followed that rollout in the legislation, where first we focused on medical conversion fees in fiscal 23. That led to fiscal 24 and 25 with some of the HB2 assistance, and then over to the social equity license application assistance, which took place earlier in fiscal 25. Right now, we're in the 4th and final round of that, which we call the Social Equity Conditional Licensee Grant. And that's structured as a milestone-based program to reward the applicants as they pursue the path of becoming fully operational, as that's outlined by MCA. And that program will run through February of calendar year 2027. And the applications come in on a rolling basis, and we review those and give them the attention they need. I mentioned that throughout the design of each 4 of those rounds or tranches, there's very close consultation that took place with MCA and also the Office of Social Equity and also the Governor's Office to make sure we fulfilled all the desires of the legislative intent with that statute. Next, we move over on slide number 7. Another special purpose program focusing on funds for child care capital support. And this program was new in 2022, and it provides interest-free loans up to 5 years for a child care center, either seeking to improve itself through renovations or expanding or acquiring a new center. And the priority is given to areas of low income, and we work closely with MSDE and their guidance to identify those areas and then process the applications accordingly. Right now in fiscal 26, there was some carryover activity from last year where we settled those loans shortly after the end of fiscal 25. And we anticipate in November of this year, we'll open the program for another round of applications. But that's been very robust and well received in the markets they serve. Going over then to page 8, we touch on the Maryland New Start Micro Loan Program. And this is a new program in 2022. And it's designed to provide no interest loans to individuals who are formerly incarcerated for them to start up a new business and get things on track for themselves. And to qualify, the applicant needs to complete a business entrepreneurship program selected by a vendor that the Department of Labor has put in place. And so far, we've approved 6 applications utilizing all the funding for this fiscal year and closing those. And our partners there through Labor and also their training vendor, the Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland, have been great to work with and very responsive in helping translate the needs of a loan application to something that the formerly incarcerated individuals can deal with and work with the application and go forward there. We provide a lot of guidance and support so we can get them to a place where we can say yes on their application. Then we move over to the next 2 programs, but starting on page 9 rather. These are really our workhorse programs for the underserved small business community. And we touch first on the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, or MSBDFA. That is a very long-standing program, and it's operated under a contract with Meridian Management Group, whom you'll hear from later today, and they've been a super partner throughout the term of the contract and the program here. The program's got 4 capabilities here, and they're marketed very closely by Commerce with the Maryland Department of Labor, GOSBA, and the State Highway Administration at the different small business contract opportunities so that person looking for that small business contract can also tap into financing when they need it to be there. And that's the contract financing component that's often an entry point for them into this program. And then as they grow and scale their business, there might be other aspects of it that are provided as well. A new enhancement on page 10 through MSBDFA did come from the federal government, and this is through the State Small Business Credit Initiative that was reauthorized in 2021. And we touched on last year how $198 million was awarded to the state, and DHC was the lead. The Commerce portion of that was $45 million, which is being deployed through MSBDFA. And it's been a challenge deploying the funds. The federal requirements have a matching fund component so that each dollar that the applicant seeks from the program, they have to come up with a dollar of match. And in an underserved community, that's often very difficult. But we have been doing a good job really through all the work with MMG, getting those funds deployed. And we continue to work with DHCD and our other partners to find new efforts and opportunities to further deploy those monies. We're getting ready to, with DHC, to apply for the second tranche of funding in the coming weeks ahead. Then on page 11, we show a snapshot of some of the recent activity here. And you'll notice right away that the fiscal year 21 is a real outlier here, being the last heavy year of the relief program activities there. When you look at fiscal years 22 through 25, we really get to more typical transaction levels that have gone on historically and what we would expect to see with the program here as it continues to roll forward. While creating jobs is not the primary purpose of the program, the purpose is really there to bring capital to the underserved communities. We do track the jobs that come along with that. Recognize it's a very important economic contributor to the state. And when small business does well, the state can do well. So that's really important for our entire ecosystem. And then our other workforce program starts on page 12, focusing on underserved. The Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Program is often called VLT because that's its funding source. And slide 12 really touches on the steps that created to get us there in terms of the creation and legalization of slot machines, first in Maryland, leading to table games. And then finally in 2017 is when the VLT is a source of capital and loan program really came into being, when that was transferred from the authority of the BPW over to Commerce. And then leading over to page 13 is really, who are the funds deployed to and how? So it's for the small business owner, as we touched on. Per the statute, at least half of the funds are deployed in the areas around the 6 casinos across the state. And I'm pleased to report that we make that with relatively little special effort, so that's a good thing. But the other funds are available to small and underserved businesses throughout the state. And this program can focus on just a variety of industries across the board there in that regard. The work is carried out through 9 fund managers that really act as the fund manager for distribution funds. They handle the applications, the processing, the approvals and also the documentation there. Commerce serves as an administrator, if you will. We source the funds through BPW and allocate them to fund managers, and also take care of reporting to the General Assembly and work with the auditors to make sure that all those funds are being administered appropriately. Page 14, I just touched on in terms of what the fund managers do, but at the bottom there, you'll see that in fiscal 25, there were 169 new loans approved for $24 million, so not a small number there. And similar to Ms. Bitfa, although it's not a job creation program per se, we do track the jobs that come along with these, and both in terms of the new jobs and the existing jobs for the business that are being supported there, recognizing the importance of those business operations to the families they support as well. As we go to then page 15, just a snapshot of the 9 fund managers. We are always looking for more fund managers and actively talk that up to new people. It's a great way to really help get these funds out across the board there. Then moving to page 16, we get to another very dedicated program, this time for the large-scale economic development projects. And sometimes we call this program Advantage Maryland for marketing purposes, but for our government acronyms is MEDAF, for the Maryland Economic Development Assistance Authority and Fund, which is why we like MEDAF a little better. But this has 5 capabilities that over time have really evolved into some of the other programs we touched on. For example, the regional or local revolving loan funds are really taking place now through the VLT program, if you will. This has some other capabilities to go through other programs as well, such as the child care loan program I touched on previously. So while MEDAF had those capabilities originally, those functions and purposes have really migrated over to the programs where MEDAF is really used for the large-scale economic development projects. Some examples of the industries they touch are here on page 17, and these reflect what we call the defined eligible industry sectors that are approved by Commerce in consultation with the Maryland Department of Labor here. I mentioned that our lighthouse programs and focus that you've probably heard through other areas of focus with Commerce fit within these sectors. So we're able to support the lighthouse initiatives without additional focus here because they are able to slide into these categories on page 17. Page 18 shows a brief snapshot of recent activity from 21 up through 2025. And the 2 lows in terms of the number of transactions in 2023 and 2024 really reflect a timeline in the pandemic as we came out of it. And these projects often have an 18 to 24-month lag time. So that's why we began to see the activity pick up again in 2024 and also 2025. But here, the big takeaways here, these projects brought in outside investment of over $1 billion of private capital coming into these projects, which is very important for the state, and it helps us leverage the incentive dollars that get put into the transactions. Then on page 19, we show a county depiction here, and I'll mention what's new here is Baltimore City really moved up because of a transaction we'll highlight in just a little bit, supporting the 4 MLK building in the Biolab Park here. Otherwise, these trends are very typical year in, year out for the MEDAF because it reflects where really the state's assets are and where the private sector businesses want to be and leverage investments they have there and add on to that. Then page 20 begins to just portray the economic impact and how it's measured here. Looking at since the program started in the year 2000, you can see the number of transactions there and the total number of dollars involved here. And it highlights here some of these deals are structured as loans that are repayable. Some are structured as forgivable loans, where if they meet certain conditions with regard to hiring and investment, then the loan can be forgiven, provided that the state makes its return with all the commitments the company makes there. And I'll mention those are contractual obligations. And if the company misses a piece in their contract, then they receive an invoice, or we restructure the bill so that it continues to be friendly to the state, but also reasonable for the business in that regard. We kind of measure the point on the very last bullet point there where return on incentive for each dollar of assistance going out of the fund into a project, the state gets back a return of almost $15 for each $1 of incentive there. And so that's a good benchmark that we look at to figure out, is this really effective and what does it do for the state? And those returns come from the form of additional withholding tax revenue, property tax revenue, and others that come in through the state there. The last page there on MEDAF 21 here and 22 touched on some of the projects and where they were and some of the capabilities. There was a rail track safety project that needed some help in Kent County supporting businesses there and related revenue that we worked with the Maryland Department of Transportation on in Kent County. In Allegheny County, there's a rail spur that the county needed to bring in Kingspan roofing. So we created a grant structure to help out that project, recognizing how important those jobs were to Allegheny County and that investment. And then some other recent transactions here on page 22. Top left, you have Rocket Lab in Baltimore County. Very exciting for our aerospace industry and another lighthouse sector business. Then moving to the right, you'll see the Hitachi plant in Washington County, which is working on the rail cars for Romada. Alertus is a technology business in Baltimore City. I mentioned for MLK, which you see then the picture in the middle left there. And these other projects pictured here are others across the state that MEDAF was used to assist in that regard. So that's a roundup of what we have here today, and be glad to answer any questions, and appreciate your time.
Chair Bidle.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the work that you're doing, and we know that economic development is so important to our state, particularly right now. I do have concerns about trying to support our startup cannabis businesses, our social equity businesses. And so the committee visited a processor yesterday, and he was sharing with us issues with the competition from this illegal hemp, and it's really creating a problem for our legal cannabis businesses. They're seeing very flat sales. So I'm concerned about how it's going to affect the new startup businesses. Are you doing any work in that area at all, or?
We're where the MCA is doing a lot of work on that, and so we work within the structure of the program that we have for the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund, and then in consultation with the MCA right now, we're trying to figure out what comes next after this round 4 that I mentioned earlier, and what's that need out there. And of the $80 million that was approved originally in the legislation, there's about, we've deployed roughly half of that, and there's another remaining $35 million that'll be deployed in this round 4. And there's additional revenue coming in through the cannabis tax revenue, and we're talking with MCA to figure out how could that be utilized, what's the need there to make sure those needs that you're experiencing.
MCA was with us yesterday. Tabitha was part of the tour that we took, and I'm meeting with her today. You know, we're going to try to legislatively increase their ability to advertise, but the taxes are a whole nother issue. While our legal cannabis providers are paying 12%, the illegal hemp is paying 6%. So there's a lot of issues involved there. So I think we'll be working with ATFF to trying to enforce what's happening with the illegal market. But thank you for your work in that area.
Any comments, follow-up comments, or? No, okay. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite being on appropriations for 16 years, I've never had a presentation that I can recall from the Commerce Department, because it just wasn't in the subcommittee I was in. I've seen a couple of Commerce secretaries speak. So some of my questions are going to appear that I don't know much about what Commerce does. But on page 19, I noticed that the MEDAF, there are, over a 4-year period, there are a lot of counties that there's no activity, and Harford County, which I represent, happens to be one of them. So is that typical? If I were to look back, I don't know how long this has been in existence, but if I look back at a further period, would I see that generally MEDAP is in every county, or what would I find?
You would find that the longer time span that you look at, the more friendly it becomes to the geographic dispersion.
Okay.
In that regard, we there's flexibility there to support a business in a county that's received less assistance. And I mentioned Allegheny County, for example, not to pick on the county, but we recognize that there's just not the same level of activity compared to some of our central Maryland counties. And so we make sure we talk to the county local economic development directors, understand what their needs are, what their works are, what their work involves, bringing companies in, helping the ones that are there expand, to make sure that we direct the attention that we need to so that those businesses are heard, whether it's in Western Maryland or on the Eastern Shore counties, or even Southern Maryland, for that example.
Well, maybe you can follow up and send me some information about what, if any, activity is going on in Hartford. And then this is, you know, a broad question with which I would ask for a short answer, and then you certainly can follow up. But I noticed, at least in this presentation, you know, we touch on various small businesses, and you do track some job creation. Do you happen to track the longevity of these businesses? In other words, if we help get a small business under any category you can think of, we help them in some way. Do you track whether they, over the long run, remain in business and are successful, or do you track that kind of information?
I think you'll hear some information about that from Meridian Management Group when they present. We do track graduation, for example, and then we've been doing more with other parts of the, one of the governor's performance committees to track that and do more tracking.
Because you can see why I would ask, because
Yes.
it's not, if we're going to be using any kind of government assistance, we don't just want a good year. We want some longevity, and we want success over the long haul. So you're saying there'll be another presenter that can address that?
I believe so, yes.
And then last question, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. Given the treasurer's report and, you know, the usual knock on Maryland being overly reliant, in quotes, overly reliant on the federal government, as long as I've been around politics since the 90s, you know, there's always been like, we need to not be so reliant on the federal. We need to have private sector jobs. And by private sector, I mean also jobs that aren't basically reliant on the federal government, you know, so many government contractors. Do you, not now, but if you could follow up and let me know what efforts, I don't know if the Commerce Department works on that, so maybe that's the first question. Does the Commerce Department try to, you know, develop businesses and work with businesses that would help immunize us from that problem? Is that you do?
The short answer, yes, we do that.
good.
And the slide with the industry sectors really reflect our key strengths, the ones that are here that we want to help grow, and also attract new businesses that come in that aren't reliant.
So not to answer now, but if you could just send me some information, I'd like to see sort of over a period of time, you know, how well we've been doing with getting ourselves more private sector jobs and less reliance on the federal government. And this is you know, as long as I've been around, so 30 years, I know it's an issue, it probably goes back 40 or 50, I don't know. But anything you could follow up with, I'd be very interested in.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating. We can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Chair Watson had a question.
Would you mind sending to the committee a breakdown, geographic breakdown of the child care capital support grants that you mentioned from fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 26? Thank you.
Great. So you're taking notes. I want to make sure you finish your note taking. So following up on, thank you for your presentation, gentlemen. Following up on Senator Delaney James' question about those areas in the state that have no activity when it comes to the MPF economic program. Charles County, my district, is one of them. There is absolutely nothing I see on the chart that's happening in Charles County, and which is interesting because we have a large federal research facility there in Charles County through the Naval Base, hundreds and hundreds of engineers, scientists on that base, and the spillover economic activity over the years, the technology for airbags and cars came from the research and development that happened on that base. because as you know, I'm not sure if you know, airbags are launched by explosives that determine basically sensors when to deploy in an accident. And that technology, which is helping save so many lives around the world, was developed at the naval base in Indian Head. And their activity is still happening there, a lot of research, and the area is undergoing a economic resurgence. We have a large nonprofit U.S. Bomb Tech Association moved to Indian Head in Charles County probably 5 years ago, bringing a lot of sister brother companies doing research in technology area, working along with the base. We are in the process, we finance, we've been in the Maryland General Assembly and the governor's office, a SCIF, a room you can go and have secret discussions, really, and to really transfer a lot of those technologies into the private sector. So how do we have that potential source of a lot of development of projects there in, say, Charles County, and other areas have them too, and your agency is not really represented in that potentially rich economic development zone?
I can assure you, it's not for lack of trying. Commerce was involved with the OCA facility.
Which facility?
5 years ago. The U.S. Bomb Tech Association.
Okay.
We were involved with that at the time.
Yes,
And there have been some other projects that from time to time become proposed, but then if the private sector business either doesn't get its federal contract, for example, with Department of the Navy in Indian Head, then they don't have the need for the project. So we have a lot of projects that lead to proposal but end up just not happening because something doesn't happen that's totally outside of our control. But we're always looking and working with the local, county economic development officials to make sure they're aware of us and that we can be as visible as we can for those opportunities, and really to be on a leading edge of that, to anticipate and try to drive things.
Okay, yeah, we'll follow up on that issue.
And I'm sorry, Senator, if you like, we could provide maybe an expanded timeline of project we're done over counties, like we kind of touched on in the Harford County example here.
Sure, yeah, sure. We'll appreciate that. Thank you. And, sir, you had?
Yeah, I was just going to add, our team has been in Charles County, I think, 4 times in the last 3 weeks. So we're very familiar with the opportunities that are there. We're working closely with your local economic development leaders to identify opportunities and projects and try to move them forward.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate that. And one last question on the fund managers. I saw a list of fund managers spread out all throughout the state. I don't see any in the Southern Maryland region. And basically, Mr. Bryce, you mentioned the opportunity to have more fund managers. Could you elaborate on that, basically, and bringing these economic opportunities to the southern part of the state?
Certainly, yeah. To obtain a new fund manager, Commerce needs to go through a request for proposal process, coordinate with the Board of Public Works, and we advertise those opportunities periodically. And before we do that, we promote the opportunity in the hopes of seeing some good applicants come through. So that's what we go through, and in early next calendar year, anticipate going through that process to hopefully find one in other areas where we don't have one.
I'm sorry, you kind of trailed off. You said in the next calendar year?
Yeah, in early
2026?
Yeah, in early 2026, yes.
So what will happen in 2026, please?
We'll do an RFP.
RFP.
In the hopes of attracting another fund manager or 2 or 3, perhaps.
Okay. Is there a limit on number you can bring in, number of fund managers?
There's not a limit, no.
Yeah, because, I think we as a state, we have to, and this tied into the previous question about the MEDAF program. We have to make sure that throughout the entire state, everyone have these opportunities. It's not something we should ration, but we should expand these programs throughout the state proactively, because economic activity is happening throughout the state of Maryland. And the potential is there, including the airbag example I used before. And so the RFP that will be put out, will there be any outreach to organizations throughout the state about this program? And
I'm sorry.
and basically encourage them to apply, because where there is not knowledge, basically people will not be able to respond. So will you reach out to underrepresented parts of the state to let them know about this opportunities and proactively make sure that a fund manager is in every part of the state and accessible to our citizens?
Yeah, thank you. Our first part of that is proceeding through the Maryland Economic Development Association, where all the counties and also municipal jurisdictions, many of them are also represented, to promote the opportunity of the upcoming RFP, so to create that awareness, if you will. Then I'd also note that we would work with them to find some of the more local community organizations that could be good fund managers that maybe they're not aware of or we're not aware of, but it could be a Hispanic association, for example, that could be closer to underserved community than maybe a county or commerce is, to make that opportunity known.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And actually, if I may, Senator, just for awareness, we are proactive with all of our programs across the state. We actually have regional representatives across the state that represent the Department of Commerce, that liaise with local economic development, that also do site visits and work directly with businesses. Their job, in part, is to ensure that those local businesses, the chambers and economic development organizations, but more importantly, the businesses, are fully aware of the opportunities with respect to commerce, our different programs from financing and so forth. So we're very proactive, and we do lean in. And it actually marries very well with the governor's mantra, leave no one behind. We try to live that at Commerce, and we would like to facilitate growth in every corner of the state.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy that this governor is here, leaving no one behind, because I tell you, in Charles County, we've been left behind in so many issues. And so we're looking forward to working with Commerce and the governor to make sure that his promise of leaving no one behind is brought to fruition. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Co-chair, any questions? Okay, thank you so much. Any more questions or comments from the committee?
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. Appreciate all the best to Secretary Coker. Next is an update from the Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industrial Development Corporation, MARBITCO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Great to be back before the Joint Committee again this year. I'm Steve McHenry. I serve as Executive Director of MARBITCO. It's the acronym for our long-winded name of our organization. I've actually been the only executive director. I was here at the beginning some 18 years ago. So we've made a lot of progress along the way, thanks to great support from the General Assembly and governors past. So again, it's a pleasure to be before you. I'm going to try to cut my comments short since it's getting a little bit late, but let me whip through some slides here quickly. MARBITCO is a specialized economic development finance entity focused on Maryland's farm, forestry, and seafood industries. So we focus, basically, we're a small business financer, primarily a lender, but we do have some incentive grants. We have today 20-some financial programs. 12 of them are loan programs. 6 of them are grant incentive programs, and 2 of them are combination beginning farmer land preservation programs, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. But what we do really is to help to sustain business activity that covers literally half the state's land area. Today, fully 1/2 of the state's land area is privately owned farm and forest land. So those businesses and property owners provide not only economic and food and fiber benefits, but also ecosystem service benefits, recreational benefits, et cetera. So these traditional rural-based industry now also in the urban areas are important for a lot of reasons to Maryland. There's a slide there that just covers Maryland agriculture only, provided by the USDA at the last census of ag. We have a diverse agriculture in Maryland, but you'll notice that animal agriculture is particularly important. Both the poultry industry and some of our dairy and cattle and sheep enterprises are important as well. Poultry, though, is very important. Roughly half of Maryland's agricultural production is in the poultry industry on the Eastern Shore, which heavily supports our corn and soybean and wheat farmers. So very important. Maryland Ag at a glance, we have something over 12,000 farms today. Average size of those farms is 158 acres. We have 23,000 producers that are picked up under the Census of Agriculture. So some equine operations are not picked up by USDA, and forestry and seafood business are not covered under the USDA Census of Ag. Interestingly, the number of female farmers that are the lead operators is growing. We're up to nearly 38% today, and that's gone up with every census that's done every 5 years. So there's more, farming has been a family business, husband, wife, grandparents, kids, but more and more we're seeing the women in the family as the primary operators. The average age, and this is one of the reasons that Marbitco was created, the average age of the Maryland farmer, unfortunately, is continuing to rise. It's over 58 years old today. But here's another interesting statistic. The average age of the beginning farmer, as of the last census, is 47 years old. So what we're seeing is mid-career people deciding to go into farming, which is something we really are trying to be supportive of. In terms of some other statistics very quickly related to the land, 2 million acres is covered by the Census of Ag. There's about another 1.5 million of forested land that's not covered by the Census of Agriculture. And I wanted to point out that well over half of Maryland's farms are less than 50 acres in size. So again, that's an area, something that we're trying to pay real attention to. The next slide, you'll see that the economic impact of Maryland agriculture, forestry, and seafood industries. We contract with Salisbury University's Beacon research unit to do a study for us about every 4 years or so. And these pre-pandemic numbers show that the ag, forestry, and seafood industries comprise about $20 billion of economic impact, which does not recognize some of the impact of the equine industry, unfortunately, just the way the data is reported. And that supports nearly 90,000 jobs with these resource-based businesses. Additionally, the study further detailed that about $16.5 billion of that is food and fiber production. As you would think of agriculture, forestry by itself is rather important, $3.3 billion. And unfortunately, the seafood industry is continuing to decline. It's less than $300 million here as of the report that was done 3 years ago. We're using information from, prior to the pandemic, 2019 data report was issued 3 years ago. I showed the regional impacts of this data for you because I think it's helpful to recognize that, well, there's a lot of agricultural production in the rural areas, perhaps something of the primary production, perhaps 70% of that is on the Eastern Shore. But you add it all up, it's important everywhere in the state. And even in Central Maryland, if you look at the statistics here, 45% of the economic impact is in the 5 Central Maryland counties. So you have some primary production, but you also have a lot of processing activity, sometimes called manufacturing in traditional economic development parlance. So really, this is important to all aspects in all areas of the state that we support these resource-based businesses. I think I've already alluded to this. We have a particular focus on food and fiber production and processing. I think you can go to the next slide. And if it grows and it's processed, what is grown in Maryland, that's potentially in our bailiwick, and this includes the harvesting of Chesapeake Bay seafood products. The next graph sort of illustrates how Marbitco fits into the small business economic development financing. You've heard about the commerce programs, and they support small business lending with the VLT lenders, et cetera. We're highly specialized, and there's really only two public sector agencies that work in this space, USDA and Marbitco. And when it comes to small and, young and beginning farmers, we're probably doing close to 70% of the project finance. And so, we feel, very good about that. USDA has been a good partner to us over the years, and we work with them when we can. But you can see there how we fit in. So we're not funding the Main Street restaurant or the Main Street bakery, for example. We're focused on the farm and that processing of those agricultural products coming off out of the field, out of the forest. In terms of some highlights from last year, we had a pretty good year last year. In fact, we did a record loan volume in our lending programs last year, nearly $9.4 million worth of loans made. Our loan programs fall into our core loan category, which revolves from the capitalization that you all just completed last year. For 18 years, you were making a $2 to $3 million investment to Marbitco to help us stand up our lending capacity. That is now complete. And then we also do what we call specialty lending. So we receive a grant from the federal government, from you all directly, from another agency for a particular purpose. Typically, we can take a higher risk, a higher level of credit risk in making those loans. Sometimes we can even forgive part of the loan for good repayment performance. And with our money, our core loan money, we call it our money, we almost always require collateral security. With these specialty lending loans, we rarely require collateral security. So these are riskier loans. I referenced the beginning farmer land preservation programs. We have two. We call these the next generation programs. So in these programs, we're helping beginning farmers buy their first farms in exchange for either temporarily or permanently extinguishing development rights. We've done 50 projects to date through two programs, and we work very closely with MALF, Rural Legacy, and the county agricultural land preservation programs in offering these programs. And it's really, it's great to see not only these younger people, which can be well into their 30s. I think we looked at the average a couple of years ago, it was early 30s, of the couples that were buying their farms, typically couples, not always. And last year we were able to preserve over 600 acres of farmland through the programs that we offered through 6 projects. Last year, you heard me talk quite a bit about the need for blue catfish processing. That continues to be the case. The blue catfish are consuming in very large quantities commercial species that we would like to see on our table, blue crabs, et cetera. And so we're continuing to support that through grants that you have provided us funding for, through our livestock and blue catfish processing grant program. We made 12 grants last year in that category. And you can see there that we also helped some young and beginning entrepreneurs with their processing projects as well. Speaking of blue catfish processing, we just made our first loan for a very sizable loan of $1.8 million to a startup blue catfish processing facility in St. Mary's County using substantial funding provided by USDA. We were pleased to receive a $3.8 million grant, which we had to match with 25% of our funds a couple of years ago. So we're beginning to deploy those funds. And we have approved another project for a livestock processor in Cecil County to replace a facility that burned down, unfortunately, last year. And also, unfortunately, approval for that loan also requires USDA approval. And with the federal government shutdown, we're waiting anxiously for the staff at USDA Rural Development to return to approve a loan for a livestock processing facility in Cecil County. I should point out another big need that we're seeing right now in rural areas is with large animal veterinarians. This is a nationwide problem, and we launched a loan program last year to try to tackle this. Other states are actually putting significant funds into attracting large animal vets to their states through student loan relief. Some states have programs where they provide $125,000 in student loan relief in exchange for veterinarians to practice for a certain number of years in the state. Virginia just funded a program that's a little more flexible, providing $110,000 each for large animal vet attraction. So we're trying to do what we can with loan funds. We don't have a dedicated pool of grant funds for that at this time. And now to just share with you some statewide programmatic activity highlights since the beginning of MARBIDCO. You can see there that as of the end of the fiscal year, we funded something over 1,500 projects with just under $120 million in funding. And you can see in the next chart how the split runs. More grants than loans, but the dollar volume is with the loans. So you can see that there. We've closed over $92 million in loans, leveraging $242 million in commercial lender capital, and assisting 345 young beginning farmers with loans, with grants, 12 million. So 12 million versus 92 million. So we're really focused on lending. We do make those grants available when we have funds to do that. And we've actually helped 430 young beginning farmers with grant incentive programs. And then I mentioned the next generation programs. We have assisted 42 farmers with their farmland purchases, which again is preserving that land at the end of the day. And just another breakdown by region. You can see here using the 4 regions that I used before with the Beacon report findings, how it shakes out. So our funds are going all over the state. Again, 70% of Maryland's primary ag production is on the Eastern Shore, so there's no surprise you're seeing a lot of lending activity, particularly on the Eastern Shore. But the grant and next generation funds are well distributed throughout the state. And then finally, looking at our loan performance, we're very proud of the fact that for an economic development lender, we've had relatively few loan defaults. Actually, just 8 in the 18 years that we've been making loans. We've lost just 1.26% of the funds we have lent, which is terrific for an economic development lender. You can typically see 5 to 7% losses with small business lending, and so we think we're doing pretty good there. And finally, I do want to share some demographic information because you've asked about that in the past. I noted earlier something over 37% of Maryland producers are women, and as of the end of the fiscal year, 31% of our project financings have gone to women, so yeah, pretty close. We can certainly perhaps do better, but we're pretty close. And then in terms of veterans, 9% of Maryland farmers have served in the military previously, and we're at 8.5% of our projects have gone. Since we've been tracking this, we haven't tracked it from the beginning. It's just been the last 7 or 8 years we've been tracking this, and 8.5% are veterans. We also offer a special incentive to veterans. We give them a 0.25% interest rate reduction with any loan that we make in our core programs. And then finally, looking at some additional demographic information, you can see as of the last census of ag that 3.7% of Maryland farmers are minorities. So it's a relatively low number, but for MARBIDCO, almost 13% of our projects have gone to minority business owners. So we feel like we're doing pretty well given the fact that relatively few farmers in Maryland are minorities. So looking ahead, mostly good news. Our core programs are self-sustaining. Our specialty funded programs, Senator Vital may remember our Oyster Shucking House loan program. We still have funding in that program to lend, so we're going to keep that going. We have a micro loan program for watermen. We still have funds to lend in that program as well. And our next gen program have funding for the next 2 to 3 years. So good news for you all. I know it's a difficult year coming. Not going to be asking for funding for those programs. We have had some specialty grant funding in the past for local farm and food aggregation grants, as well as for wood processing grants. That funding is going to probably run out by the end of this current fiscal year. And we're not planning to ask for funding for next year, but we are planning to ask for level funding. I know Delegate Watson will be interested in. We're just asking for level funding of $300,000, just $300,000 for our livestock and blue catfish processing grant program. So that concludes my remarks, and be happy to take any questions.
Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and what a wonderful presentation. You have a lot to be proud of, and I'm glad you're very successful. I'm one of those few people who own a farm in Hartford County. So I had just a couple of quick questions on the next generation farmer programs, the two you have. Is it primarily that you leverage off of mouth, in other words, to buy, or provide the funding, and then the young farmer will sell the easement to, I guess, mouth or some other program?
Yeah.
How does that work, just a little bit?
So we have the money up front.
But do you get it from the transfer tax, or is it coming from
Well,
elsewhere?
you all, the General Assembly has provided funding over the last, since 2018.
Okay.
Ending 2 years ago, has provided funding which we have deployed to provide up to $500,000 when a farm of at least 50 acres in size or greater. So it's a mouth eligible property.
Okay.
We will provide basically a large down payment, which allows the bank to also make a loan for the balance.
Yeah.
And we're only taking a temporary easement through what we call an easement option purchase.
Got it. Okay.
On that farm. We give that beginning farmer 7 years to sell the permitted easement to mouth, rural legacy, county
POS,
program.
something.
We don't care. We don't hold permanent easements
Got it.
at Marbitco, just
So you have
temporary.
additional money, which is great. You have
So,
additional
and
money.
that was the point I was going to make and didn't. The reduction to the program open space programs could have an impact on repayment funds flowing through in the coming years, because we're hoping that at least half of those easement option purchases, pay back. So what happens is we provide 51% of the fair market value. Mouth pays 58%. We get repaid. The beginning farmer keeps the difference, but getting repaid, that money revolves in the program.
You bring up a good point, because if we are going to dip in, which to these programs or cut back, we ought to probably allow for your program to have a like sort of extension for a young farmer, because suddenly the reason they can't, transfer the easement, get sale of the easement might be because of the budgetary decisions we make. That's a good point.
It's an interesting situation because our beginning farmers are competing with the other farmers in their county. So every county has its own way of ranking the projects that go to mouth.
Yeah.
So it's the county programs that are putting these next-gen projects into the pipeline.
And then my last thematic question is just this, because I'm very aware, I have a 150-acre farm, which really isn't big historically, but it's getting bigger all the time, given what you said, which is half our farms are 50 acres or less, right? Because a lot of farming, I do, we plant crops. So we're in the feed area. We used to have cattle as well. But so what a concern I have, and we can talk later offline, is to make sure that we recognize and help farmers with that 50 acres or less, because they are still preserving land, adding to our businesses and doing things. But we make a demarcation there, and there's been historically more help for that 50 acre and above, like Hartford County has. I get a tax break because my farm is over 50 acres. And I'm thinking there could be a 49 or 35 acre farm. It's doing a heck of a lot of good work, might be surrounded by a bunch of other small farms, and yet they don't get the same ability to cut their taxes, in half. And you all, luckily, do have a small program.
We do, and exactly to
acknowledge.
address that point,
And
since
that's why you did it,
2022,
right?
we've had our small acreage next-gen program where we actually purchase outright the permanent conservation easement on farms between 10 and 49 acres in size. So we recognize that as well. We developed a program to
And I
actually
think
meet
that
that
is
need.
fabulous, that no one really had to prompt you, that you saw that this is a trend and a need, and I thank you very much for that.
That's the great thing about Marbitco. We see a need.
Yeah.
If we have the resources, we can almost immediately, jump in.
Okay, and I'd like to talk to you later about how to maybe make sure this help with these smaller farmers, because I think they are a growing percentage of our farms, so.
Happy to chat with you
Thank you,
about that.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. So quick question on looking to the future. So I was blessed to be in West Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, I think last week for the opening of a brand-new, beautiful Boys and Girls Club, the Baltimore Ravens Boys and Girls Club. This is a grand facility. And that facility is right next to a public charter school. I forgot the name of it. But they have like the agricultural program there at the school. I don't know if you know of that school, but they have growing things, greenhouse. They have different farm animals, chickens and stuff like that. And thinking about agriculture and the movement towards urban agriculture. In some countries around the world, I'll just pick on the Netherlands and Europe, they have a tremendous urban agricultural activity that they export a lot of things from their urban farms. And so looking forward and helping, say, folks who have been marginalized and discriminated against, especially black farmers over the many years unable to get loans and assistance from our agricultural agency, USDA. You know, that deprivation is legendary. Basically, that is what driven the number of black farmers down, is a level of non-assistance from government agencies. Just looking to the future, do you have any outreach activity, any particular plans to go into like a place like West Baltimore in school where you have a lot of these black kids are interested in agriculture, they're really excited about it, to really work with them and follow through the activities in the school to work to create an environment for urban agriculture, greenhouses and stuff, to really help the Maryland economy in that sector also?
We are very interested and engaged in funding commercial urban agriculture. So our bailiwick is commercial businesses. So we don't have an educational mandate, you know, in statute. So we're an economic development finance agency, but we work with local government and educate, like cooperative extension, whatever, who are working with urban farms. I handed out a brochure about our urban ag lending incentive grant program, which was co-funded by Farm Credit. So we make grants to help urban farmers get a loan for equipment. And we also recently added a real estate component. Now, we haven't done a real estate grant for a bank loan yet, but we're envisioning that we would have an opportunity to do that. So, yeah, we funded more than 20 projects in Baltimore City, a lot of them cold storage projects for small farms that need to store their vegetables in a chilled environment. But we're very much want to help commercial businesses that are working in agriculture in urban areas, including through controlled environment agriculture, where you're growing stuff indoors.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that, thank you for the answer, that you don't have a mandate. Would you mind if the legislature give you a mandate to reach into schools like
we would have to have resources. Like we're an economic development finance agency.
Right. So
we're not an education agency. We're not really a technical assistance agency like cooperative extension is. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, but it seems like a big jump. Yeah. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's what we need to do in Maryland, do big jumps to fix a lot of things that are wrong, historically, culturally, racially, and to really fix our economy looking forward. So look forward to following up with you with that discussion.
Very good. Thank you, Senator.
Chair Watson? Okay, any more questions? Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your presentation. Okay, we'll move next to the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, TEDCO. Thank you for being here, Mr. Lamal Stovall.
as my colleagues come up, I'm going to be joined here by Dr. Abi, who leads our Maryland Innovation Initiative, and Mr. Stephen Allville, who leads our federal engagement efforts. I also have in the audience Mindy Lehman, who leads our government affairs and works with Alex, who actually puts all these documents together. And then I'm also joined, outside of my wife, I have 19 other bosses in my life, and one of them is here, one of my board members is here, Nona Cheek. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of TEDCO over these years. A couple of startup things. Number one, I'm not going to take you through all these slides. We're going to hit on a few of them, but I'm not going to go on them in order. So that's going to, and on that point, I actually will go to the next to the last slide, which is next Tuesday, we will be having our expo at the University of Maryland at College Park Hotel at UMD. We're expecting well over 1,000 individuals to be there, including our governor, including the controller. And the one I'm most excited about, don't tell the governor this, is the Baltimore Oriole bird is going to be there. The mascot's going to be there. And the other thing that's going to be real, we're going to make some pretty big announcements with the governor. We're going to have the U.S. ambassador from Jordan. They're going to be there. We're going to have representatives from South Korea and Taiwan. As well as there with some announcements that we're going to be making there at Expo. So it's a huge event, well over 1,000 individuals. We have over 100 exhibitors from all over the state that will be there. So that's point one. It's a second, for me that hear me talk, you hear me talk in alliterations, and I talk in alliterations, one, because it helps me remember what I'm supposed to say, and it helps you remember what I say. And so I hope the theme that you're going to hear from me today is around what we call the 4 S's at TEDCO. And those 4 S's, number one, is about stitching. How do we put together those things that need to be put together that have been working more in singular and need to be working more collaboratively, and which is one of our core values. The second S is scaling. How do we literally, senators and delegates, how do we make 1 + 1 = 5? That's the whole, how do we make that happen, particularly in our entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem? And if we get into, really, if we do that scaling, Senator, we can actually create more stitching. And if we do the stitching right, we can create more scaling. And if we do that right, some of that what we're doing today, which is the next S, we can do storytelling better. And we've got to tell a better story of what we're doing here in Maryland and how that, and by we're doing that storytelling, we can bring more resources to the state to help us better scale and stitch and better storytell. And so when we do that, and we get into, I'm an old computer scientist, when you scale better, you stitch better, you storytell better, you get to the 4th S, the last S, which is how do we cause a higher level of stickiness for those entities that are started, stay, and scale. There's a whole lot more S's here in Maryland. That's the whole point of TEDCO. How do we start those entities that start here and get them to stay here? And so that's what we're going to be, and I hope that's the theme you're going to hear as we speak today. So as we go to page 3, we're talking about, we've been here for 27 years. I've been here for 5. I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary, so I want to thank you all for your support, not just for those 27+ years, but for the 5 for me. It's been a great ride serving the citizens of Maryland, but most specifically the ecosystem, our innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the state. As we go to the next page, I wanted to show you this one because it's talking about the journey. So, and also I wanted back to the scaling and stitching and having impact, which I'll talk about more. I want to make you see that this is a pretty small team you have at TEDCO. And so it is a small but mighty group that we have here at TEDCO. And we're very proud of the fact that we like to be lean, and we like to talk about how the one TEDCO team is small but mighty, and we're bringing the impact that we'll talk about here in a little bit second. So to give you some idea of the growth of those 5 years. When I started TEDCO 5 years ago, there were about 22 folks at TEDCO. We're now approaching 50. And a metric that's used in the traditional venture capital space, and we don't, we're a combination of being both a venture capital and economic development and a venture development organization. I'll talk more about those 3 in a second. But a traditional metric in the venture capital space is assets under management. We were a little under 150 assets under management, which makes us one of the largest ones in the country, by the way. We're now approaching almost 250 million assets under management, over 50 people. And that's because of your support and some of the other resources that we've been able to secure that we'll talk more about. As we move to the next page, this is, there's 2 really key pages in this deck, and this is the first one. And sometimes we don't talk enough about values, and particularly in this era where we're shouting at one another and not talking with one another. And so this really baselines what we do at TEDCO, both individually and again, what we talk about our One TEDCO colleagues, but how we then interact with the ecosystem in the state. And so it's important for you all as the legislators and as my board to understand that we really don't, these aren't just words on the page of accountability, collaboration, integrity, stewardship, and respect. They're really how we bring about and when we talk to one another and when we haven't lived up to them. We can use these words to say we've not done, or if I've not done something correct, someone will say, hey, that wasn't a way to do collaboration, Troy. That wasn't a way to do stewardship. And so we are very clear about these. And I really, that's why this is at the beginning of every deck that we do, no matter who we present to, we want everyone to understand that these drive what we do and how we do at TEDCO. So as we skip 2 pages and go to the economic impact page, this is showing $2.7 billion of economic impact. So I want to point out a couple of things on this page, if I may. One is, this is a couple of years old, and we're actually, in 2026, will be updated. We work with the University of Baltimore to do this econometric analysis. The other thing, job creation obviously is a big deal that the legislators want, the state wants. But I want to point out a couple of things. One, the average size of a TEDCO portfolio company, we have over 150 portfolio companies right now, and that doesn't include our portfolio in Maryland Innovation Initiative and Maryland Stem Cell Fund. The average size of a portfolio company is 3 people, 3 folks. And again, in the traditional venture capital space, the whole point of that is to grow resources that you have, but not to actually almost to grow the people there. So it works against what we want to be done here as a state, but we're very good at still making those 2 things balance out. How do we make sure we create entities that want to be investable by the traditional investment community, but at the same time growing Maryland jobs? And we're able to balance those things. The other thing I want to point out, and we'll send, Alex will send a link to the committee. We now have a scoreboard on our website that allows you to search by your legislative district, that allows you to search by county, search you by our different funds, so you can see our investment activity. It's version 1. As a software guy, I will tell you version 1 of anything ain't the best, but it's out there. And so the next versions of it will include some of our other services and programs that we have. This is focused on our investment, the ones that you'll see. But you'll see even down to where we're investing in people of color and women, where we're investing in counties. And so over time, we want to be able to send to each of you individually what's happening in your legislative district across all of the entities at TEDCO. So that's the goal for us to get to, so that when we get our data. But this has been a long-term project to get our data. The last thing I'll say about this page, this is the econometric analysis that we went and did. But the recognition of TEDCO and what we do has not just been done internally, but also by others. So last year, for instance, PitchBook, which is a well-known national article that looks at all the venture capital entities across the United States, again, for our venture capital side, said TEDCO is one of the best in the country at what it does. As a matter of fact, it's top 5 on the Mid-Atlantic and one of the top in the country at doing what we do in terms of investing and bringing impact. The NASDAQ recognized us for the investment that we're making in people of color and under-invested communities, to the point where TEDCO's logo was on the marquee there in Times Square, the NASDAQ. And so we're very proud of that what we're doing is bringing impact to the state, but also being recognized by others. I want to jump to what I think is the second most important page in this deck, is this, what I call the hockey stick slide. So this, if there's ever a page you ever want to know everything about TEDCO, it's on this slide. And what the point about this slide is telling you how we're doing the journey of our companies when they're in our labs, whether that be a federal lab or a university lab, and you'll hear more about that from Abby, as they move their way and become a company and getting into our various funding programs. One of the ones I want to point out here is our federal programs that Mr. Alva leads. And so we recognize that, and we want to thank the state for the support that it provides to us. But we also recognize the limits of that support, as you've talked about with some of the other folks. And so over the last several years, we've been very aggressive at going after federal dollars. And I like to joke that with the work that Stephen and his team are doing, that if we were a baseball team, we'd be in the Hall of Fame twice with the batting average we've been able to do. We've been very successful, not just getting them, but bringing entities together. If you look at the success that we've had, we've been bringing together other entities. So it's not just TEDCO going after these grants, it's entities across the state going after these grants. If you also look at the federal programs, it's looking at what we do with our federal labs. How do we get out of Indian Head? How do we get more activity out of Indian Head and bring it to a commercialization? We're very aggressive in doing that, and he's got some programs. But the one I want to point out is this effort that they call Bridge. There's an entity that we're going to talk more about, SSBCI, that you've heard us talk about the last several years. We're one of the best in the country at deploying those funds, and Commerce talked about them earlier, and our friends at MMG have some SSBCI dollars as well. But there's a technical assistance side to it, and we were the first in the country to get this $10 million technical assistance grant because we thought about it differently. We thought about it differently in a couple of ways. One, we thought about it differently in that we looked at not just Maryland, but other states. How do we make sure that, how do we look, not just look at tech companies, which is what we do, tech and life science? How do we make sure any type of entity that's looking at entrepreneurship has these resources? But also we looked at it regionally. And so we're looking at this efforts that we're looking with the SBDC across, how do we make sure that entities are looking at Maryland as a place to try to grow that are in Delaware, that are in DC and Virginia. So we're able to do that through that. The rest of this page looks at our venture funds, and you have pages on this venture funds. Our venture funds are writing checks anywhere from about $250,000 up to $2 million. Growing great impact across that, looking at the social impact where we're looking at entities that may not eventually look at or be looked at for traditional venture capital, but we know they're going to be a $5 or $10 million entity here in Maryland, paying great wages, growing jobs, and we're able to put those venture capital dollars into them. Our seed funds look at entities that have kind of gone beyond those proof of concept and now are ready to go to that next stage, but haven't quite generated revenues, and we're able to put dollars into those. And our seed funds, our venture funds are traditional venture funds where we're looking at, those are entities that are about to scale and really drive a different thing, even in the tech or the life science space. So as I double click and look at a number of our efforts, I want to start with stem cell, and Dr. Rashika Najjar, who leads that, could not be here today. She apologizes for that. But I'll read some notes about stem cell. And stem cell, and I think Avi will talk about this with MI, has been greatly impacted by the changes coming out of Washington, D.C. in terms of funding research. And so just to read some of her notes, just in the last year, they've had a massive surge in applications by 800%. In terms of applications coming to stem cell. The funding cycle, their first funding cycle, fiscal 26 alone, requests total over $21 million, surpassing the fund's entire annual appropriation of $15.5 million. Given that, there were fewer than 20% of the applications were funded in this funding round that they just recently completed. One of the things that's happening with stem cell is we're not just investing in the research, but also in manufacturing. And support for commercialization price has grown fourfold from $5 million to $21 million, most of those being manufacturing grants. And those grants have proven very powerful in terms of accelerating progress, in terms of jobs growth here in the state. So there's a lot of that's happening in stem cell that's directly been impacted by what's happening with NIH and funding there. So I'm going to turn over for a minute to Abi, talk about Maryland Innovation Initiative.
Great. Thank you, Troy.
And by the way, that is on page 13.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time today. I'm Abi Kulshrestha. I serve as the Executive Director for the Maryland Innovation Initiative, or MII. MII was established by statute in 2012 to promote research and commercialization. Initially, primarily from Maryland's research institutions. There are 5 that we started serving. Those are Morgan State, UMBC, UMB, UM Baltimore, and Johns Hopkins. Although I'll talk a little bit about our efforts to expand that impact more broadly. By the numbers, briefly, the Maryland Innovation Initiative has dispersed over $60 million since its inception. Our $60 million have drawn over $800 million in follow-on funding, a return of over 13 to 1. We do track our metrics of the life of companies. We've supported the creation of over 400 sustained jobs in the state of Maryland in innovative sectors through our work. On the next page, you'll see our annual funding. We received $5.3 million toward what I think of as our core program. But in addition to that, as part of the federal tech hubs effort led by the Greater Baltimore Committee, we additionally received $1.5 million per year over the last fiscal year and this one to launch a program called the Baltimore Innovation Initiative Pilot Program, which essentially takes the MII model and contemplates its expansion to every university, college, and community college in the Baltimore, Columbia, Towson metropolitan area. And we'll talk a little bit about what we've learned through that process on a subsequent page. We're unique in that we provide both grant funding to universities and investment funding to the startups that emanate from those universities. And in that sense, we are a truly translational program. We think about how to get science and technology over that hump and to a place where it can create jobs and investment. Our three priorities this year, and I'll tie one of them into the Baltimore Innovation Initiative, as we think about our strategy and growth, one is really to support the resilience of colleges and universities in this moment. We know that colleges and universities have been tremendously hard hit. The federal research workforce has been tremendously hard hit this year by changes coming out of Washington. And while we cannot backstop the federal government's cuts to research and development, we know that we can provide resources and connections to university researchers who are thinking about other ways to frame and fund their research. So our application volume has also grown quite substantially. We've gone from being able to fund about half of all applications that come in to now being able to fund about 1/6. We anticipate, actually today is one of our deadline days, we anticipate that falling further as investigators continue to react to the federal government's news. But we're here to support them, again, most ideally through awards, but otherwise through a number of commercialization resources. The second priority that we have is inducing industry-university collaboration across Maryland's lighthouse sectors to address grand challenges. We have a number of space race caliber challenges that we face as a nation, whether it's integration of artificial intelligence and new technologies into manufacturing to make the United States a competitive manufacturing country again, whether it is the growth of quantum computing, as we've seen around the cluster in College Park, whether it's thinking about agricultural production. We fund things across all of these sectors, and our number one priority right now, especially given changes in federal funding, is thinking about how to engage industry in research with our university and college partners. And we've heard that as a priority from both universities as they think about how to diversify their revenue streams, but also from industry, who are recognizing that their fountain of innovation needs to be refigured. And the third thing, and perhaps most exciting for us, is really thinking about the statewide expansion of the Maryland Innovation Initiative. For the first 11 years of our program, we primarily served those 5 institutions that I mentioned, which primarily sit on the I-95 corridor. In 2022, we were given an opportunity to pilot an expansion with 2 institutions, Bowie State University and Frostburg State University, one in Western Maryland, one further east, to really think about what research, innovation, and translation look like at emerging research institutions. And we can talk a little bit, I think we presented on that last year. We saw tremendous results from that, the establishment of tech transfer and innovation offices at both institutions, as well as funding of cutting-edge research in agriculture, manufacturing, nursing across those institutions. The Baltimore Innovation Initiative, although it was separately framed, you can almost think of as a principally aligned to that. Saying, again, it's not just about these 5 research institutions or even emerging research institutions. Community colleges themselves are actually doing some of the best work in corporate engagement today as they think about workforce training, as they think about innovation on the line. I moved here from Alabama and know firsthand how instrumental the Alabama community college system was in supporting the growth of the auto manufacturing sector in the state. We see our community colleges as critical industry partners for us. And so the Baltimore Innovation Initiative gave us an opportunity to expand to 6 community college partners. We have already funded 1, that's Howard Community College, and are working to fund the remaining 6 in our metropolitan statistical area, which includes Hartford Community College. We're working with them to establish an MOU right now. So we last year, and I'll close on this. Delegate Vogel introduced House Bill 799, which was subsequently passed by both chambers and signed by the governor. Those pilots that I mentioned have either lapsed or will lapse. The Frostburg and Bowie State pilot lapsed last year. The Baltimore Innovation Initiative will lapse this year. And we wanted to think about a more holistic way to contemplate our statewide expansion. And so with the support of this body and with the governor's office, we passed the Maryland Innovation Initiative. There's a lot of letters here. Essentially, it's our extension program. Really to think about how we support innovation, again, not only within those 5 research institutions, but outside of those as well. You can almost think of this as a holistic way that we want to move and evolve those pilots, as well as a broader statewide expansion forward. That came about, I think, relatively quickly last year during the legislative session with, of course, with our support. It did not come with any funding. So one thing that we're doing over the course of this year is at least doing the groundwork to make sure that the people at these community colleges, and universities know us, and that we're understanding what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, this needs to be driven at the ground level. And so we had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to visit Montgomery County College with Delegate Vogel. We are going to do the same thing. We're aiming to do the same thing throughout the state over the remainder of this year. With or without funding, we want to be as useful as we can to these university and college partners as they go to their innovation bases. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Troy.
No, it's good. Thank you, Avi. So I think on that last piece in particular, what you heard was that, and I want to just reemphasize, but say a little different than Avi very well articulated, is that innovation and entrepreneurship doesn't stop at just at our 5 research institutions. They're happening everywhere across the state. And so we couldn't be more excited to, again, back to my point about stitching and scaling. This is how we start to reach into those communities that sometimes haven't been looked at before, and how do we make sure we find that entrepreneurship and innovation and bring it to market. As I look to close, I want to just talk a few more efforts, if I may. One other federal effort I do want to speak about is because through your support, Maryland's now one of 20 states in the country that match the SBIR STTR grant that comes from the federal government. We just did 5 grants here recently, Stephen, I got that right? We did 5 grants where we're matching up to 75 of that phase 1 and phase 2 grants. We're very excited about that. Again, another means for us to drive innovation and bring that innovation to market. Again, I'm going to be jumping around, and I want to jump to pages 29. One of the things that we have done over the years, before I got to Tech Codes, we divide the state up into regions, and we put individuals very much working with the commerce team in those various regions across the state. And their goal is to, again, stitch and scale those local assets, those local resources, to bring them to the market. But 2 of the areas that we did not have individuals in were, one was in Baltimore City, the other was in Prince George's County. And so we launched, you can go to the next couple of pages, we launched the Urban Business Innovation Initiative, focused on those 2 areas. And actually through the efforts that we were able to do through the Bridge program, we'd be able to expand both the resources we have in our rural areas as well as in our urban areas to cover more of the state that we were not able to cover with just the funds we have. So again, another example of how we've been able to leverage the state funds with the federal funds to bring more resources to the state. As we continue to move quickly through the document, go to page 33. One of the efforts that we launched last year at Expo that I'm extremely excited about, when you look at that hockey stick and the stages of capital in the traditional venture capital space, one of the stages that's not on this page that doesn't get as much talked about is the friends and family. And how do you make sure, and as the governor likes to, not everybody has the same friends and family. So some folks just don't have $25,000 to get their idea that's on the back of a napkin or in their head to a proof of concept stage. And so last year we launched this concept capital where we're providing $25,000. We're going to do it again here at Expo next week, $25,000 to folks to get those ideas from that back of the napkin, from their ideas, from their garage, to a proof of concept so they can move to eventually becoming before our investment team to present, or any traditional investor. So we're very excited about what we're doing with our concept capital. I want to spend a minute talking about Equitech growth, which is on the next page. So we just finished up our 2nd round here recently, or we're in the process of finishing up our 2nd round. This is through your efforts. You've been funding us at $5 million a year. It'll be funded for the next 6 years. When we first started this, we thought we were going to get about 30 applications. Last year, we got 75, representing about $30 million. This year, we thought we'd get about maybe 60 to 70 applications. We got almost 90, representing almost $45 million. Do I have that right? $42 million? $42 million. They came from across the state, and you see here the distribution of the awards from the first funding round. We haven't announced the next funding round because we're literally in the process of finishing up, but I can tell you it's represented across the state. We have representations from all the regions of the state will be represented in the announcements we'll be making. But I want to, if I may, take a minute. I know I'm probably running long. I want to read, if I may, 2 efforts. We got down to, of the almost 90, down to 30 that were shortlisted, but we could only fund 9. But I want to read a couple of them that came in that if we had more funding, we would be able to. So one is from Montgomery County, And this was to put together a workforce accelerator, I can't even say the word, bioconjugation hub through a GMP facility. They expected the impact to have 100 direct full-time jobs at the GMP facility by 2027, and the initiative projects $2.8 million in aggregate trainee wages by 2027. We were not able to fund this. There were better opportunities than this one that I just described. Just to give you another one that came from Howard County. This was a cyber ready clinic that was going to establish a common good managed service provider in Maryland. They were asking for about $2 million. They believed they would create 13 full-time equivalent jobs over 3 years, internships of 180 and serving 220 customers, generating salaries from the $60,000 to $120,000 range. We were not able to fund that. So that didn't make the final cut of 9. So I give you that idea of the types of great efforts that are happening. And by the way, all of these efforts, the 2 that I just described, the 9 that we will announce, this wasn't just one group. These were multiple groups back to stitching that came together, and that was a big part of the scoring rubric. They had to come with groups of entities that came together to put this together. As I quickly close, the next page, 35, again, through your efforts, we just celebrated another year of the loss of Pavel Apir. This is very much aligned with the BII effort. This is an Innovation Accelerator Grant Program, again, focused on the Baltimore MSA. This is focused on students at those same institutions that Abby mentioned. How do we make sure we're giving them some acceleration grants to get their ideas that are for students off the ground? Then lastly, the Makerspace effort, you also funded $1 million a year. We've been very excited about this. This is a spread across, you see the awardees for fiscal 25 all over the state. Again, as I said earlier, this is an effort to look at makerspaces, again, those places where people can come and actually make stuff. We have this for the next 2 years. So this is another, again, I think many people see TEDCO, as I close, many people see TEDCO as just around what we do on the venture capital side. But if that venture capitalist doesn't have the talent, if it doesn't have places, if it doesn't have the support mechanisms, that's what this ecosystem is about, and that's what we invest in, so through your support. So again, I won't go through the rest of it, but we're here to answer any questions. Again, thank you for your support.
Thank you so much for your presentation, gentlemen. Any questions, members? Just want to say, appreciate all the work you're doing and your determination of reaching every part of the state with your activities that you help. That's really appreciated. Quick question. In Southern Maryland, in St. Mary's, we have University of Maryland, Southern Maryland campus or institution, and they are working with a large base, the Patuxent River Naval Air Station, especially in UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles and technologies, a lot of technology. Are you doing anything with them, working or considering doing anything with that group there?
No. So thank you for the question, Senator. So first of all, the chairperson of my board is at the College of Southern Maryland. And so Ellen Flowers Field is the chairperson of the board, and she works at the College of Southern Maryland. So very much, and I, myself and many of our team members have a number of activities. I spoke there, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago. I was in the College of Southern Maryland. We've done work at the Smart Center as well. We've done a number of work. Our marketing development team, led by Ms. Tammy Thomas, produced an amazing video that we actually show quite a bit. We'll probably be showing it at Expo, showing all the different technologies that are happening there at that smart building as well. And we have a number of efforts. I mentioned our Urban Business Innovation Initiative work that we do. We have individuals that work with the College of Southern Maryland and with Indian Head directly with efforts there to bring more innovation, as I said, to accelerate. And some of the efforts that Mr. Alville is leading is looking at how do we, look, we've got more federal labs here in the state of Maryland than any other state in the country, period. But the challenge and just the truth of it is we don't have the same level of commercialization out of those federal labs as other states do. We just don't, for a variety of reasons. And so that's a lot of the efforts that we're doing right now. How do we find a different way? And the way we've done it historically just doesn't work. And so how do we bring innovation to the innovation? And so that is a lot of the work that we're doing right now at places like Indian Head.
Great. Thank you. Senator Glenn James.
Not to stretch that, and you can follow up in writing with people. I'm terribly interested in this tech transfer from both the military and from our higher education and community colleges. So, and I just really was very interested in this exchange and the fact that, you know, some of our historical approaches haven't worked, because to me, it is just gold mines everywhere in the state of Maryland that nobody has figured out how to mine and get it out, because I feel like the one way we can escape some of our over-reliance on the federal government without cutting back, because it's so vital, is to figure out how to commercialize when the time is right, you know, innovations at universities, and obviously with you know, military facilities, there's a lot of other considerations, but ultimately the military, despite all its rules and regulations and methodical ways of, do want to transfer out to the world what they're creating after they, you know, after it's done what it needs to do for them and it's the right time. So I'd be so interested in you all following up briefly with me in writing, or the committee, about, you know, what approaches you might be thinking about. If you want to direct me just to read stuff on your website, that's fine. But I have Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is a mega base in the country, and I have a fledgling little group of additive manufacturing that I created that just isn't fitting into any of the ways in which larger counties with other, you know, with higher ed are able to do some tech transfer. There's some issues about our whole environment up there, but that's the largest military base in Maryland, and one of 4 in the country that all, you know, they're just full of research labs. That's all they do. So I really want to follow up with you on how to figure out on our end how we can get more of what they do in research to work for us in the commercial space.
Absolutely, and I'll let Abby and Stephen maybe chime in very quickly. We'll actually send you, we'll get some stuff to you on some of the work that we're doing. But if I just may, before I let these 2 gentlemen chime in, I want to separate the words entrepreneurship and innovation, because it's important, it's distinction. Innovation is what you do to make something cool and new. Entrepreneurship is about taking the risk to bring it to market.
Right.
And so we're good at both. And so part of what we do is helping them stimulate that innovation, but how do you bring that to market? Yeah.
I could just interject here. Senator, I think you make a good point about us being a little bit delayed today. So if we could maybe continue this discussion.
That's why I said they could follow up with
Exactly.
me.
Continue this discussion offline.
We absolutely will. And we'll send information to you, Senator.
I would also encourage you all to look at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab and their program for tech transfer, which I think has been very successful.
Yeah.
But you raise good points.
Right.
And I'd love to give you a chance to respond more fully, but we'll have to do it offline if that's
Yes.
okay.
No.
with
I'm absolutely fine with that.
But we appreciate the support.
Yes, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate your very comprehensive update, and we're going to move on now to the update on the activities of the Meridian Management Group. We have Timothy Smoot, the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, and Alexa Aguana, President of the Morgan Advisory Group, with us today. If there is anyone else, you could introduce them, and you may begin.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, will be very brief. I understand, you know, we're probably approaching your time to complete this. So I'll start on sort of page 2. MMG Capital Group, as we're known in the marketplace now, has been around for 30 years in managing the programs of the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, and we're also one of the fund managers for the Video Lottery Terminal Fund, as the folks at Commerce alluded to this morning. Sort of, what does Ms. BIFA do, as we call it? Ms. BIFA is sort of a backdrop alternative lender. When companies can't get financing from the banks and other traditional lending institutions, the state has developed these programs over decades to help them out in the field of void. Essentially, the companies have the characteristics of the owners having subpar credit scores, insufficient collateral, insufficient equity, a history of bankruptcies, tax problems, collections, a history of losses maybe, and Madam Senator, we do help startup businesses. Our portfolio probably contains some 15% or so of startup operations. And sort of what makes us different from the banks, as an alternative lender, we charge interest rates anywhere from 5 to 8%, which is traditional in the banking marketplace. And that was the intention of the General Assembly when they developed these programs. And some of the things that we do, for example, when companies get contracts, we will provide mobilization funding to help them get started on those contracts. There's a lot of companies, they can win the contracts, but they can't buy materials, for example, or they can't make the first 2 or 3 payrolls before they can invoice and get paid. So we try to provide mobilization funding to get them started on the projects. We also defer principal payments pretty routinely up front. One of the things that we think, for a lot of these businesses that's not realistic is for them to get a loan one day and start paying it back the next day. So we try to allow them to get some traction and develop cash flow before they start repaying the loan. I'm going to go to page 5. So we do this through 4 particular programs. The contract financing program, which provides up to $2 million to help companies perform on government and regulated utility contracts. We have a loan guarantee program that is similar to the SBA, and I'll get into that just briefly in a moment. We provide surety bonding to help contractors win contracts. And those are bid payment and performance bonds. We also provide equity financing as well, where we can purchase an interest in companies. And actually, we co-invest with TEDCO on a number of transactions. I wanted to talk just briefly about the guarantee program because last session, we had some legislation passed through the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee that allowed Ms. Bifford to actually take capital and put it into a bank to secure a loan for a small business. So just one quick example, if we have that opportunity, and that legislation, by the way, took effect October 1st, we could take $300,000, put it into a bank to secure a $600,000 loan. Okay, if in fact we didn't have that capability, we could do it ourselves. However, it would take us $600,000 to do it. So by leveraging those funds into the bank to secure the loan, we can actually leverage the funds and do more with what we have. I'll go to page 7. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit and then open up the floor for questions. Portfolio outcome over the last 5 years, fiscal years, we did 86 loans. The average loan size is $327,000. Number of companies have graduated or paid off their loans, 38. And as well, the loan loss rate is right around 3%. Over the decades, that loan loss rate has ranged anywhere from 3% to 11%, during the recession. Go to page 7. Just briefly, in terms of ethnic dispersion of funds, 70% of the transactions, 68% of the dollars have gone to minority businesses, while 30% of the closed transactions and 32% of the funding has gone to non-minorities. In terms of gender, 42% of the funds have gone to women-owned businesses in terms of the number of transactions and 28% of the dollars. I'll go to page 14, or 11, I'm sorry, page 11. We provided a chart of the geographical dispersion. I know there was a lot of discussion about, everyone serving, all of the counties. There is limited activity in a number of the counties, but we're making every effort to collaborate with the procurement officers from the various counties, the economic development officials, and as well as the commerce regional reps. Go to page 14. Over the past 5 fiscal years as well, we've done 201 transactions for $38 million. On average, we loan or invest anywhere from $4 million to $7 million during the course of a general fiscal year. And back into the SSBCI program, Commerce earlier showed in their chart that we dispersed $6.9 million. We have picked up the pace tremendously, sort of in the last probably 45 days or so. And I'll include one of the transactions that will close next week will be at about $12.7 million. So we'll be short probably about $1.3, $1.4 million of getting rid of what we call the first tranche of money, and then we'll start working on the second tranche of money right away. And there are about 3 transactions in the pipeline right now. Page 15. Just real quick, just provided some examples of some of the companies that we've helped. A chocolate manufacturing company, a health food manufacturing company, a science data corporation, and as well as a company that provides communications equipment for the military. We've also in the past financed airplane maintenance companies, construction, healthcare, franchises, hair care and skin care products, pretty wide variety. I'll go to page 17. MMG, again, is one of the 9 fund managers. We are probably, along with Anne Arundel County, we're 2 of the largest fund managers on board. Over the last 5 years, the casino fund has done 101 transactions for $14 million, and 24 companies have paid off so far. Y'all kind of limited to that, Madam Chair. I know it was getting a little time consuming. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to.
Well, we appreciate your effort, and this is a wonderful presentation, very comprehensive and thorough. Do we have questions? None? Mr. Chair? Do you have anything else you'd like to add since we don't have questions right now?
Just, Senator, you made a point earlier or raised a question as to, the SBA lending. SBA lending has been suspended right now. And actually, we've already received, 3 calls from bankers who can't process any more SBA loans, and for us to take a look at providing that. And we can also use this new expanded guarantee program to help guarantee loans where the SBA, again, has stalled those efforts. So, yeah, we expect a lot of traffic to come in the next, 30, 60 days, depending on how long, this situation lasts in the federal government.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And are there any more comments? If not,
No, we appreciate all your hard work and keeping
thank you, Senator. Appreciate you.
Keeping us apprised of your efforts.
Okay.
And look forward to more success with your
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and that is the end of our hearing. We are adjourned.